The principal's office was silent, too silent. Isaiah sat across from the superintendent, his fingers clenched into fists under the table. On the other side, Mr. Reynolds sat stiffly, his face unreadable. Then the superintendent leaned forward, his voice low and cold. "Isaiah, you've made your point, but if you keep pushing this, you might not like what happens next." Isaiah's breath caught. Was that a threat? His mother's voice was calm but sharp as a knife. "Are you threatening my son?" The superintendent didn't blink. Isaiah knew in that moment that this wasn't just about one failing grade. This was about power, and if they thought he was about to back down, they had no idea what was coming. Before we start the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a new one. The classroom buzzed with the usual mix of laughter, shuffling papers, and the occasional sigh of exhaustion. It was the final period of the day, the kind that dragged on endlessly, where students watched the clock more than they listened. Mr. Reynolds stood at the front, his presence stiff, his lips curled into a smirk as he held a stack of graded tests in his hands. He flipped through the papers slowly, enjoying the tension in the room, letting it stretch. One by one, he handed them out, nodding in approval at some, barely glancing at others. Then he reached the last paper. His smirk widened. He turned toward Isaiah Thompson, the quiet student sitting in the third row. The one who had spent weeks studying for this test. The one who never spoke unless called on. The one who had been carrying the highest grade in the class. Until now. Mr. Reynolds tapped the paper against his desk before sliding it onto Isaiah's desk with a slow, deliberate motion. A thick, red F bled across the top of the page. For a moment, everything else faded. Isaiah's fingers curled around the paper, eyes scanning the answers, searching for an explanation. Every response was carefully written, backed with clear reasoning, yet question after question was marked wrong. His stomach clenched as the weight of it settled in. This wasn't just one bad grade. This was different. Mr. Reynolds leaned in slightly, his voice just low enough so that only Isaiah could hear. "You really thought you had this one, didn't you?" His tone dripped with amusement. "Maybe history just isn't your subject." He straightened, letting out a small chuckle before turning back to the class. "All right, moving on," he announced as if nothing had happened. Isaiah sat frozen, his mind racing. This wasn't the first time. Over the past few months, small things had built up. Grades lower than expected, missing assignments that had been turned in, extra work ignored. But this was different. This wasn't just unfair. This was deliberate. The bell rang, snapping Isaiah out of the daze. Chairs scraped against the floor as the students rushed to leave. The paper crumpled slightly in his grip before being stuffed into his backpack. There was no use arguing. No one would listen. Complaining would only make things worse. Instead, he stood, moving toward the door, pushing past the frustration, past the anger. Just as he stepped into the hallway, a voice called out behind him. "Oh, and one more thing." Isaiah turned back, meeting Mr. Reynolds' eyes. "Don't bother asking for extra credit," Reynolds said, his smirk widening. "I don't give handouts." Isaiah exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. He turned without another word, walking away. But as he disappeared down the hallway, a single thought burned in the back of his mind. This wasn't over. Isaiah walked down the hallway, his mind clouded with frustration. The voices of students laughing and chatting around him felt distant, muffled, almost like background noise in a movie. He barely noticed when Miles Carter, his best friend, jogged up beside him, nudging him on the shoulder. "What's up, man? You good?" Miles asked, noticing the way Isaiah's fists were clenched at his sides. Isaiah didn't answer right away. He pulled the crumpled test paper from his backpack and handed it to Miles without a word. Miles took one look at the giant red F and let out a low whistle. "Wait, how?" "I saw you studying for this like crazy." His eyebrows furrowed as he flipped through the pages. "Dude, these answers are right. I literally remember you explaining this stuff to me. How did he—" Miles stopped mid-sentence, his expression darkening. "It's Reynolds, isn't it?" Isaiah let out a sharp breath and nodded. "He didn't even let me see the answer key. Just failed me. Again." Miles shook his head, anger flickering across his face. Nah, man, this is straight up messed up. You gotta tell somebody. Isaiah huffed out a humorless laugh. Tell who? The principal? You think she's gonna listen? He shook his head. You already know how this goes. It's my word against his. And let's be real. Who are they gonna believe? Miles clenched his jaw. He knew Isaiah was right. Mr. Reynolds was well respected, a teacher who had been at the school for years. Parents trusted him. Staff praised him. To everyone else, he was just a tough teacher who expected the best from his students. No one would believe he was intentionally failing Isaiah. What about your mom? Miles suggested. Isaiah stiffened. He didn't want to bring this home. His mother, Monica Thompson, had already sacrificed so much to get him to where he was. Long nights working extra shifts, making sure he had everything he needed for college. She believed in him more than anyone. And now, thanks to one bitter teacher, his GPA was slipping. His scholarship chances were fading. His entire future could be at risk. I'll figure it out, Isaiah muttered, stuffing the paper back into his backpack. Miles looked at him carefully. Nah, bro. You better do something, because if you let Reynolds get away with this, he's gonna do it again. Isaiah didn't respond. He just kept walking, his thoughts swirling. Miles wasn't wrong, but what could he do? Isaiah sat at the kitchen table that night, staring at the test paper. The red F seemed to mock him, each stroke of the teacher's pen feeling more like an insult than a grade. His mother, Monica Thompson, moved around the kitchen, fixing dinner after a long shift at the hospital. The smell of baked chicken filled the air, but Isaiah barely noticed. His appetite had vanished the moment he stepped out of Reynolds' classroom. His mother glanced at him from across the counter, noticing the way he hunched over the table, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing the edges of the crumpled paper. You've been quiet since you got home, she said, setting a plate down in front of him. Something on your mind? Isaiah hesitated. He had told himself he wouldn't bring this up, wouldn't worry her with something he could handle on his own. But when he looked up and saw the concern in her eyes, his resolve cracked. He slid the test across the table. Reynolds failed me. Monica wiped her hands on a dish towel before picking up the paper. Her brows pulled together as she skimmed the answers. This doesn't make sense, she said, flipping the pages. These answers are right. Isaiah let out a slow breath. I know. He's been doing this all semester, marking stuff wrong, saying I didn't turn things in when I did. He shook his head, frustration creeping into his voice. And it's not like I can prove it. It's his word against mine. Monica pressed her lips together, her grip tightening on the paper. Did you talk to the principal? Isaiah scoffed. Yeah, right. And have them tell me I need to work harder or take accountability. I already know how that conversation goes. Silence stretched between them. Monica's face was unreadable for a long moment. Then she set the test down and folded her arms. We're not letting this slide, Isaiah frowned. What can we even do? He's been at that school forever. Nobody's going to believe me. Monica leaned forward slightly, her tone calm but firm. Listen to me, Isaiah. I didn't work 2 jobs to put you in a school that will take away your future because of some bitter old man. He thinks he can fail you without consequences. She tilted her head. Then maybe it's time he learns what happens when you push the wrong student. Isaiah sat back in his chair, watching as his mother picked up her phone. He had no idea what she was planning, but one thing was clear. This wasn't over. Isaiah watched as his mother scrolled through her phone, her expression unreadable. He had seen that look before, the one that meant she was already planning something, already 3 steps ahead. Who are you calling? He asked cautiously. Monica didn't answer right away. Instead, she tapped a number and held the phone to her ear. It rang twice before someone picked up. Dr. Halloway? This is Monica Thompson. Isaiah's stomach tightened. Dr. Halloway? The principal? His mother wasted no time. I need to set up a meeting about my son's grades. I have strong reason to believe Mr. Reynolds is unfairly targeting him. Isaiah sat up straighter, feeling his pulse quicken. There was a pause on the other end. Then, the principal's voice, muffled but calm. Monica's lips pressed into a thin line. No, I don't think this can wait until next week. I'd prefer tomorrow morning. Another pause, then a sigh from the other end. Fine, we'll see you at 8. She hung up, setting the phone down with a decisive click. Isaiah rubbed his forehead. Mom, this isn't going to work. Dr. Holloway isn't going to do anything. She's probably just going to tell you Reynolds is a respected educator and that I need to put in more effort. Monica crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. Oh, I know exactly how that conversation will go. Her eyes met his, steady and certain. That's why I'm not walking in there empty-handed. Isaiah frowned. What do you mean? His mother picked up his test paper and held it up. We're going to make sure they can't ignore this. Isaiah sighed. I don't know, Mom. It's not like I have proof. Reynolds doesn't use Google Classroom. He grades everything on paper. He's been making sure there's no record. Monica nodded, already thinking. Then we'll make a record. She pulled out her phone again and opened her emails. Send me everything. Every assignment you turned in. Every test you think he graded wrong. We're going to start documenting everything. Isaiah hesitated, then nodded, pulling out his laptop. If his mother was willing to fight, he wasn't going to sit back and do nothing. As he started forwarding emails, something shifted in his chest. For the first time since getting that failing grade, he felt something new. Hope. The next morning, Isaiah sat in the school's front office, his hands clasped together as he tried to steady his nerves. His mother sat beside him, her posture calm but firm, her eyes locked on the door to the principal's office. She wasn't nervous. She was ready. Mr. Reynolds walked in a few minutes later, his usual smirk in place. He barely glanced at Isaiah before nodding at the secretary. Dr. Holloway called me in for a meeting? The woman behind the desk motioned toward the office door. Go right in. Reynolds strode past without another word, his confidence unshaken, as if this was just another routine meeting. But Isaiah knew better. The door opened, and Dr. Holloway gestured them inside. She was an older woman, strict but polished, the kind of principal who preferred avoiding conflict rather than addressing it. She folded her hands together as they all took their seats. Mrs. Thompson, I understand you have concerns regarding Isaiah's grades, she began, her voice neutral. Monica nodded, placing a neatly organized folder onto the desk. I do. My son has always been a top student, yet his grades in Mr. Reynolds' class have suddenly dropped, without any reasonable explanation. Reynolds leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Isaiah has been struggling with the material, he said smoothly. It happens. Not every student excels in every subject. Monica didn't even blink. That's interesting, she said, flipping open the folder, because I had a Harvard professor look at my son's last essay, and he said it was college-level work, yet Mr. Reynolds failed him. Reynolds' smirk faltered just slightly. Dr. Holloway frowned. Harvard? Monica nodded. Dr. Elijah Brooks. He's a friend of mine. I sent him Isaiah's work because I couldn't understand how someone with his academic record could suddenly be struggling. She slid a printed copy of the professor's email across the desk. Holloway picked it up, her eyes scanning the message. The air in the room grew heavy. Isaiah watched as Reynolds shifted slightly in his seat. I also went through every assignment my son has turned in this semester, Monica continued. We compared them to the grading rubric. Do you know what we found? No one answered. Monica's voice didn't waver. He was graded unfairly, time and time again. Questions that were marked wrong had the correct answers. Essays with thorough analysis were given failing marks. His work wasn't evaluated on merit, it was dismissed. Holloway set down the paper, adjusting her glasses. Mr. Reynolds, do you have an explanation for this? Reynolds let out a forced chuckle. This is absurd. I have high standards, and maybe Isaiah simply didn't meet them. Isaiah clenched his jaw. The same excuse. The same way Reynolds had dismissed him yesterday. Monica raised an eyebrow. Then why have multiple students reported the same pattern? I spoke to parents. I asked around. It seems like my son isn't the only student you've treated this way. Reynolds' smirk was gone now. Dr. Holloway exhaled. This is serious. If there's a pattern, we need to… Before she could finish, Monica pulled out her phone. Oh, and one more thing, she said, echoing Reynolds' own words from the day before. I sent all of this to the school board last night. They'll be reviewing Isaiah's grades and your record. The room fell silent. Reynolds' face paled. Isaiah had never seen him look worried before, and that's when he knew. This wasn't over. It was just getting started. The silence in the room stretched, thick with unspoken tension. Mr. Reynolds' usual confidence had been replaced with something else. Uncertainty. His fingers tapped against the arm of his chair, his smirk long gone. Dr. Holloway flipped through the printed email again, her brows furrowing. The weight of the Harvard professor's endorsement, combined with Monica's meticulous documentation, had shifted the power in the room. For the first time, the conversation wasn't about Isaiah defending himself. It was about Reynolds explaining himself. Monica leaned forward slightly, her voice steady but sharp. "Tell me something, Mr. Reynolds. If my son's work was so below standard, why would a Harvard professor say otherwise?" Reynolds cleared his throat, forcing a chuckle. "Well, I can't speak for some professor who isn't familiar with my grading system. That's the problem," Monica cut in. "Your grading system isn't about education. It's about control. You decide who succeeds and who doesn't. And from what I've gathered, you seem to have an issue with certain students." Isaiah watched as Reynolds' face twitched ever so slightly. Dr. Holloway adjusted her glasses, her expression unreadable. "I take these accusations very seriously," she said carefully. "And if there is evidence of bias, that is something we cannot ignore." Reynolds scoffed, sitting up straighter. "Bias?" He let out a forced laugh. "So now I'm being accused of racism?" Monica's lips pressed into a thin line. "I never said that." Reynolds opened his mouth, but she raised a hand, stopping him. "I don't have to say it. The pattern speaks for itself." A muscle in Reynolds' jaw tightened. He turned to Dr. Holloway, his voice laced with frustration. "Principal Holloway, I've been at this school for 15 years. I have always maintained high expectations. This is nothing but a misunderstanding. A student upset over a bad grade." He gestured toward Isaiah without looking at him. "It happens all the time." Isaiah felt his chest tighten. This man was still acting like he was imagining things, like he was just some kid complaining. Monica exhaled slowly. Then she pulled out another folder from her bag. "Let's test that theory then." She slid another set of documents across the desk. Dr. Holloway picked them up, her eyes scanning the pages. Her expression shifted slightly. Her lips parted just a bit, her brows pulling together in concern. Isaiah leaned forward, trying to see what was written. "These are grade reports," Monica said, her voice smooth but firm. "I requested records from multiple students. My son isn't the only one who's had assignments go missing or get marked down unfairly." Reynolds stiffened. Dr. Holloway's gaze darkened as she continued flipping through the documents. "You gave failing grades to students who had turned in passing work. You penalized certain students for things you ignored in others. This is—" She hesitated. "This is concerning." Reynolds let out a sharp breath. "So now I have to defend myself for having high standards?" Monica's eyes narrowed. "Having high standards isn't the issue. Having different standards for different students is." Isaiah watched as a flicker of something passed across Reynolds' face. For the first time, his confidence cracked. Just for a second. Dr. Holloway set the papers down, exhaling slowly. "I'll need to review this further, but I can already say that some of these concerns are valid." She turned to Reynolds. "Until we conduct a formal investigation, I think it's best if Isaiah's recent grades are placed under review." Reynolds' face twisted. "Review?" Dr. Holloway nodded. "Yes. We'll have an independent evaluator regrade Isaiah's work. If any inconsistencies are found, they will be corrected." Reynolds opened his mouth, his frustration clear, but before he could speak, Monica pulled out her phone. "Oh, and just so we're clear, this isn't the only action I'm taking." Isaiah's eyes widened slightly. "Mom," but she kept going. "I already reached out to the school board, and they've agreed to look into this matter. I also spoke with a few education reporters who are very interested in cases like this." Reynolds froze. Dr. Holloway blinked. "Reporters?" Monica shrugged, her face calm. "Well, if nothing is wrong, then I'm sure there's nothing to worry about. Right?" Isaiah watched as Reynolds' entire body tensed. The man had always acted untouchable, like he held all the power. But now he looked nervous. Dr. Holloway exhaled. "This situation is clearly escalating. Mr. Reynolds, I think it would be best if you took the rest of the day off while we sort through this." Reynolds' mouth twitched. He looked at Monica, then at Isaiah. Finally, he pushed back his chair and stood up. "This is ridiculous." He grabbed his bag. his movements stiff before turning toward the door. But just before stepping out, he threw one last glance at Isaiah, his jaw tight. Isaiah didn't look away. For the first time, Reynolds was the one leaving in silence. As the door closed behind him, Dr. Holloway let out a slow breath and looked back at Monica. "I'll be conducting a full review of Isaiah's grades, and the school board will be informed of the situation." Monica nodded, standing up. "Good." Isaiah followed his mother out of the office, still stunned by everything that had just happened. His mother had walked in there like she was holding all the cards, and somehow she had been right. As they stepped into the hallway, Isaiah finally found his voice. "Mom, you didn't actually call reporters, did you?" Monica smiled, adjusting the strap of her purse. "I didn't have to. The threat was enough." Isaiah let out a breath and shook his head, a small smirk playing at the corner of his lips. His mother was something else. But as they walked toward the exit, one thought remained. Reynolds might have been rattled, but this wasn't over. Not yet. Isaiah barely had time to process what had just happened before the whisper started. As he walked through the hallway, students turned their heads, some pretending not to stare, others not even bothering to hide their curiosity. He could hear them murmuring, some confused, some amused, some in complete shock. "Did you hear? Reynolds just got pulled from his class." "No way, that dude's been here forever." "I saw him storm out of the office. He looked pissed." Isaiah tightened his grip on his backpack strap, keeping his expression neutral. He wasn't used to this kind of attention. He had spent years keeping his head down, doing his work and avoiding problems. And now? Now everyone was looking at him like he had started a war. Miles caught up with him at his locker, grinning like he had just won the lottery. "Dude, tell me you saw Reynolds' face." Miles shook his head, still laughing under his breath. "I wish I had recorded that." Isaiah let out a slow breath, shaking his head. "This isn't funny, man." Miles raised an eyebrow. "Oh, it's hilarious. The guy's been treating you like trash all year, and now he's finally getting what's coming to him." He leaned against the lockers. "Besides, people are talking, bro, and not just students." Isaiah narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" Miles glanced around, lowering his voice slightly. "Some teachers are acting weird. I saw Mr. Patel talking to Miss Rivera in the lounge, and they looked nervous. Like, we just realized we might be next, nervous." Isaiah frowned. "Next for what?" Miles shrugged. "I don't know, but think about it. If Reynolds was doing this to you, who else has he been messing with? And if teachers knew but didn't say anything, that makes them just as guilty." Isaiah hadn't thought about that. He had been so focused on his own situation that he hadn't considered the possibility that Reynolds might have been doing this to other students. And if he had, then this was bigger than just one failing grade. Just as that thought settled in, a new voice cut through the noise. "Isaiah!" He turned and found himself face to face with Ava Mitchell, one of the smartest students in his class. She was known for being flawless academically, the kind of person who teachers adored, always polite, always getting straight A's. And yet, her expression was tight, her hands clenched at her sides. "I heard what happened," she said, glancing around as if making sure no one was listening. "Can I talk to you? In private?" Miles and Isaiah exchanged a look before nodding. They followed Ava to a quiet corner of the hallway near the back stairwell. She turned to them, her eyes flashing with frustration. "I need to know what you told the principal," she said. "What exactly did you show them?" Isaiah crossed his arms. "Why?" She hesitated, then pulled a crumpled test from her bag. Isaiah felt his stomach drop the second he saw the red D at the top. "I got this back last week," she said, her voice tight. "I checked my answers with the textbook. I even compared them to one of my classmates. They got a B and we wrote the same responses." Miles whistled under his breath. Damn. Isaiah's mind raced. Ava never got low grades. Ever. If Reynolds had been targeting her too, then this wasn't just personal. It was a pattern. "How long has this been happening?" Isaiah asked. Ava let out a bitter laugh. "Since the start of the semester, I didn't say anything because I figured if I kept my head down, it would pass." She swallowed hard. "But now I know better." It's not just me. It's not just you. Isaiah exhaled sharply. The weight of the situation was expanding by the second. Ava squared her shoulders. I want to help, she said. Whatever you and your mom did to get Reynolds pulled from class, I want in. Miles grinned. Oh, this just keeps getting better. Isaiah didn't smile. His mind was already working, piecing things together. Ava had just confirmed what he had suspected, that Reynolds' actions weren't isolated, which meant if they dug a little deeper, they might find something that the school couldn't ignore. And then, Reynolds wouldn't just be removed from class, he'd be removed from the school. And maybe, just maybe, other teachers would start falling with him. Isaiah sat in his bedroom later that night, the glow of his laptop screen illuminating his face. His desk was cluttered with papers, old assignments, printed emails, and the folder his mother had used during the meeting with Dr. Holloway. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he scrolled through his inbox, rereading every email exchange he had ever had with Mr. Reynolds. Nothing. That was the problem. Reynolds rarely communicated through email. Everything was verbal, in class, or written on physical copies that he graded himself. There was no digital trail, no way to prove anything unless students started coming forward. His phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. Avenue Ava. I got 2 more people who say Reynolds has been doing the same thing to them. One of them got marked absent for a test they took. Isaiah felt his pulse kick up. He texted back. Isaiah. Names? A few seconds later, his phone lit up again. Ava. Daniel and Jordan. Both are willing to talk. Isaiah exhaled, his mind racing. 4 students. That was already more than enough to raise suspicion. A knock sounded at his door, and his mother peeked inside. Still working? He nodded, rubbing his temple. Yeah, Ava found 2 more people. Same thing. Wrong grades, tests marked as missing, all that. His mother stepped inside, folding her arms. That's good. The more evidence, the harder it is for the school to brush it off. Isaiah leaned back in his chair. I just don't get it. If Reynolds has been doing this for years, how has no one noticed? Monica sighed, sitting on the edge of his bed. They noticed, she said simply. They just didn't care. Isaiah frowned. His mother continued. This isn't about one bad teacher, Isaiah. It's about a system that protects bad teachers. Do you really think you're the first student he's done this to? Isaiah swallowed hard. She was right. His mother watched him carefully. The real question is, what are you going to do next? Isaiah hesitated. He had already gotten Reynolds removed from class. For now. The principal was investigating his grades. That should have been enough, right? But something about it wasn't sitting right. He thought about what Miles had said, how other teachers were acting nervous. He thought about Ava's test, how she had compared it to another student's work and still got a lower grade. And then he thought about Daniel, a classmate who had been marked absent for a test he had been present for. Isaiah's stomach twisted. He turned back to his computer, fingers flying across the keyboard as he typed into the school's online student portal. He pulled up the attendance records for his history class and searched for Daniel's name. Absent. Isaiah's heart pounded. Daniel wasn't lying. He had been marked absent for the test. Isaiah's fingers tightened around his mouse as he clicked through more records. How many more students had their attendance altered? He checked his own records next. There. 3 weeks ago. Missing assignment for an essay he had turned in early. His jaw clenched. This wasn't just about unfair grades anymore. Reynolds was falsifying records. He pushed away from his desk, running a hand over his face. This is bigger than I thought. His mother tilted her head. How so? Isaiah looked at her, anger simmering beneath his calm expression. Reynolds isn't just failing students. He's changing school records. Monica sat up straighter. You have proof. Isaiah nodded. Yeah, and if he's doing it to students of color more than anyone else, then this isn't just a grading issue. He swallowed hard. It's discrimination. His mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she let out a slow breath. If you're right, Isaiah. She shook her head. He's not just losing his job. He's losing everything. Isaiah turned back to his screen, clicking through more records, searching for any inconsistencies. This wasn't about his grade anymore. This was about exposing the truth. And this time, he wasn't stopping until Reynolds had nowhere to hide. Isaiah barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, his mind kept circling back to the records. The false absences, the missing assignments, the grades that made no sense. How long had this been happening? And more importantly, how many students had Reynolds done this to? By the time his alarm blared the next morning, he already had a plan. At school, the tension in the air was thicker than before. People weren't just whispering anymore. They were waiting. Isaiah walked into the cafeteria, scanning the tables. Ava spotted him first, waving him over. She wasn't alone. Sitting across from her were Daniel and Jordan, the two students she had mentioned the night before. Both of them looked uneasy, their shoulders tense. Miles sat down beside Isaiah, nudging him. Bro, people are talking. Teachers too. Reynolds hasn't been back since yesterday. Isaiah met Ava's gaze. He won't be back, he said. Not after what we found last night. Daniel leaned forward. What do you mean? Isaiah pulled out his phone, unlocking the screen. You were telling the truth about being marked absent for that test, Daniel. I checked the system myself. He tapped the screen, turning it to face him. Your name? Listed as absent. But you were in class, right? Daniel nodded quickly. Yeah, I was there. I remember taking the test. Isaiah turned to Jordan. What about you? You said Reynolds claimed you never turned in an essay? Jordan clenched his jaw. I turned it in early. He looked me in the eye and told me he'd grade it. Then a week later, he said I never gave it to him. Ava exhaled sharply. So he's not just messing with grades. He's deleting students' work. Isaiah nodded. And if he's been doing it to us, there's a good chance he's done it to others. Miles let out a low whistle. Man, this guy's not just a bad teacher. He's a criminal. Daniel swallowed. If we go to the principal, will it even matter? What if they try to cover it up? Isaiah thought about that. Dr. Holloway had been hesitant yesterday. Even with all the proof his mom had brought, she still hadn't fired Reynolds on the spot. She was protecting the school's reputation first. That much was clear. If they just handed her this information, she might try to quietly push Reynolds out, make it look like an internal issue that had already been handled. That wasn't enough. Isaiah wasn't just trying to fix his grade anymore. He was trying to make sure Reynolds never had the chance to do this again. He took a deep breath, his mind racing. Then slowly a new idea formed in his head. No, Isaiah said. We're not just going to the principal. Ava frowned. Then what? Isaiah looked at them, his voice steady. We're going public. Daniel's eyes widened. Public? Like social media? Isaiah nodded. Yeah, think about it. The school can cover things up, but they can't ignore an entire student body calling them out. If enough people start talking, they'll have to respond. Miles grinned. Oh, this is about to get good. Ava hesitated. What if Reynolds tries to sue us for slander? Isaiah shook his head. It's not slander if it's true, and we have evidence. Jordan still looked uncertain. You really think this will work? Isaiah met his gaze. If we get enough people behind us? Yeah. Silence stretched across the table as the weight of the idea settled over them. Then slowly Ava nodded. I'm in. Daniel and Jordan exchanged a glance, then nodded too. Miles smirked. Bro, you know I've been waiting for a good reason to stir things up. Let's do this. Isaiah exhaled, a new kind of determination settling in his chest. Reynolds had spent years abusing his power. Now, he was about to see what happens when students fought back. The first post hit that afternoon. Ava uploaded a picture of her graded test, side by side with another student's test that had identical answers, but a higher grade. The caption was simple. Why do two students with the same answers get different grades? At Lincoln High explained this. Within an hour, it had over 200 likes. Then Daniel posted his attendance report. I was in class, but my teacher marked me absent. Coincidence? More students started speaking up. A senior named Kayla Jackson posted a thread about how Reynolds had refused to write her a recommendation letter, despite her being top of the class. Then a former student chimed in, then another, and another. By the time Isaiah refreshed his feed at 8 p.m., the hashtag number Reynolds exposed was trending locally. At 9 p.m., a local journalist followed him back. At 10 p.m., an email popped up in his inbox. From anonymous tip at lincolnnews.com. Subject: We need to talk. Isaiah's heart pounded. He had started a fire. And now, it was about to burn everything down. Isaiah stared at the email, his heartbeat hammering against his ribs. The subject line was short, direct. We need to talk. He clicked it open. From anonymous tip at lincolnnews.com. To Isaiah Thompson. Subject: We need to talk, Isaiah. I've been following what's happening at your school. Your post caught my attention, and after looking into Mr. Reynolds, I think there's more to this story than you realize. If you're willing to talk, I'd like to hear everything. You can stay anonymous if you prefer. Let me know. D. Lawson, Lincoln Gazette. Isaiah's hands tightened around his phone. A journalist, a real one. This wasn't just school gossip anymore. It wasn't just a trending hashtag. This was bigger. He exhaled slowly, his mind racing. This was exactly what he wanted, wasn't it? Attention, pressure, a reason for the school to take action. But now that it was happening, it felt real, and real meant dangerous. If he talked to a reporter, there would be no going back. Before he could overthink it, he forwarded the email to his mother with a quick message. What do you think? A minute later, his phone buzzed. Mom, meet me in the kitchen. Isaiah grabbed his laptop and headed downstairs. His mother was already seated at the table, her own phone in hand. The folder from their meeting with Dr. Holloway sat open in front of her. Monica looked up as he sat down. You trust this journalist? Isaiah shrugged. I don't even know them, but they found me. Monica tapped her fingers against the table, thinking. That means they've been looking into Reynolds already. Reporters don't reach out unless they smell a real story. Isaiah leaned forward. Then we should talk to them. His mother's lips pressed into a thin line. If you do this, Isaiah, you need to be careful. If Reynolds feels cornered, he's going to fight back. Isaiah clenched his jaw. I don't care. He doesn't deserve to get away with this. Monica studied him for a long moment. Then finally she nodded. Then let's do it right. She pulled out her laptop and began typing. We need to control the narrative. If we go public with this, we don't just throw accusations. We show proof. If Reynolds is guilty, then we make sure everyone sees exactly how. Isaiah exhaled. So what's the plan? Monica glanced at him. You write back. You set up the call. And while we wait, we keep digging. Isaiah nodded and pulled out his phone. His fingers hovered over the screen. Then, taking a breath, he typed his response. Isaiah, I'm willing to talk. Let me know when you're available. He hit send. The message delivered instantly. It was done. No turning back now. The next morning. By the time Isaiah walked into school, the tension was unlike anything he'd ever felt before. The hallways felt charged, students whispering in groups, their eyes darting toward him, toward Miles, toward Ava. And then there were the teachers. Some of them pretended not to notice him. Others looked uneasy, their gazes flicking away the moment he passed. But one thing was clear. Everyone knew. Miles jogged up beside him, a grin plastered across his face. Bro, this is wild. Did you see the news? Isaiah frowned. What news? Miles grabbed his phone and shoved it in his face. On the screen was the Lincoln Gazette's website. Right there in bold letters. Lincoln High School under fire for alleged grade tampering and discrimination. Isaiah's stomach dropped. His name wasn't in the article, but the story was clear. A teacher at Lincoln High had been accused of failing certain students unfairly. Parents were demanding an investigation. The school district had already issued a statement. Ava and Jordan ran up to them, both wide-eyed. Ava held up her phone. Did you see this? Jordan shook his head, still in disbelief. Dude, it's only been a day. How did this happen so fast? Isaiah had no answer. Then a voice cut through the noise. Isaiah! He turned. Dr. Holloway stood in the middle of the hallway, her arms crossed, her expression carefully controlled. The superintendent wants to see you, she said. Silence. Ava inhaled sharply. Jordan muttered something under his breath. Isaiah squared his shoulders. Now? Dr. Holloway nodded. Now. Students watched as he followed her down the hallway, whispering as he passed. Isaiah didn't care. This wasn't fear anymore. This was momentum. And something told him. Reynolds wasn't the only one with something to lose. The walk to the superintendent's office felt like the longest walk of Isaiah's life. Dr. Holloway led the way, her heels clicking against the tiled floor, her posture stiff. Isaiah followed closely, his mind spinning with possibilities. Was this a warning? A cover-up? Or had the school finally realized they were out of options? The hallway was mostly empty, but the few teachers and staff that saw them didn't speak. Some looked away, others whispered under their breath. But one thing was clear. Everyone knew what was happening. Zaya's heart pounded as they reached the administration wing. Dr. Holloway pushed open the large wooden door, motioning for him to step inside. The superintendent's office was larger than he expected. A long mahogany desk sat near a wide window overlooking the campus. Framed certificates lined the walls, and a small bookshelf was neatly stacked with educational policy books. And sitting in the chair behind the desk was Superintendent Charles Whitman. Isaiah had never met the man in person, but he had seen his name before. He was the highest-ranking administrator in the entire district, a man who rarely got involved in individual student cases. The fact that he was here now meant one thing. The school was in damage control mode. Dr. Holloway closed the door behind them. The room felt heavy, as if the air itself was tense with something unspoken. Whitman looked up, folding his hands on the desk. He was an older man, late 50s, with a carefully practiced expression of neutrality. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice even, "please, have a seat." Isaiah sat down, his back straight, his fingers gripping the edge of his chair. Whitman glanced at Dr. Holloway before speaking again. "I assume you know why you're here." Isaiah met his gaze. "Because of Reynolds." Whitman exhaled, tapping his fingers against his desk. "Because of the situation regarding Mr. Reynolds, yes. And because of the, let's call it, media attention your allegations have brought to Lincoln High." Isaiah's jaw clenched. There it was. They didn't care about what Reynolds had done. They cared about the school's reputation. Whitman continued, "I'll be direct with you, Isaiah. We've reviewed the initial complaints. The school board has agreed to conduct a full investigation. Mr. Reynolds has been placed on administrative leave until further notice." Isaiah didn't react. That wasn't enough. Administrative leave wasn't justice. It was a way for the school to push the problem aside until the public forgot about it. Whitman studied him. "I imagine you have concerns about that." Isaiah leaned forward slightly. "You're suspending him until people stop talking about this, and then what? You bring him back like nothing happened?" Dr. Holloway shifted in her seat. Whitman exhaled. This isn't going to be swept under the rug, Isaiah. I assure you, if evidence of misconduct is found, proper action will be taken." Isaiah narrowed his eyes. "We already have evidence. I brought it to Dr. Holloway yesterday. You've seen it." Whitman hesitated. "We need to conduct a thorough review before making any final decisions. There are legal processes involved." Isaiah gritted his teeth. He knew what this was. They were buying time. "If you already know he's guilty, what's stopping you from firing him?" he pressed. Whitman's lips tightened. "There are things you don't understand about how schools operate, Mr. Thompson," he said. "These matters must be handled carefully." Isaiah clenched his fists under the table. Carefully, right. That was their way of saying, "We'll protect our own first." Whitman leaned forward slightly. "Now let's talk about what happens next." Isaiah's stomach twisted. "We would like you to step back from this," Whitman continued. "You've made your case. The school board is aware. The investigation is underway. There is no need for further escalation." Isaiah's blood ran cold. This wasn't a meeting. This was a warning. They were telling him to stop. He met Whitman's gaze, refusing to back down. "And if I don't?" Whitman's face remained unreadable. "Then I worry that this situation could become more complicated than necessary." Isaiah let out a slow breath. He had two choices. He could do what they wanted. Back off, let the school handle it on their terms, hope they actually followed through. Or he could keep pushing until the truth was so big they couldn't control it. He thought about Ava, about Jordan, about all the students who had been silenced before him. Then he thought about Reynolds, sitting at home right now, probably believing he'd get away with this like he always had. Isaiah made his decision. He stood up. "I appreciate the meeting, sir," he said, his voice steady, "but I'm not stepping back." Whitman's eyes narrowed. Isaiah gave him a tight smile. "Because I know how this works. You say you'll investigate, but what you're really doing is waiting for people to move on." He shook his head. "That's not happening this time." Dr. Holloway shifted uncomfortably, but Whitman's expression didn't change. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Isaiah," he said. Isaiah's jaw tightened. "No, sir, you are." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Whitman sat back, exhaling slowly. "Very well," he said, "if that's your decision." Isaiah turned and walked out of the office without another word. Outside the office. The second the door shut behind him, Isaiah let out a sharp breath. His hands were shaking, but he clenched them into fists, forcing himself to stay calm. They had tried to intimidate him. It hadn't worked. Miles was waiting down the hall, leaning against a locker. The second Isaiah approached, Miles straightened, his expression expectant. "Well?" Isaiah shook his head. "They're stalling, buying time." Miles sighed. "No surprise there." Isaiah's jaw tightened. "They want me to back off." Miles snorted. "Oh, yeah? What did you say?" Isaiah's voice was calm. "I said no." Miles grinned. "Hell yeah." Isaiah pulled out his phone. The social media posts had only grown overnight. The story was spreading, but they needed more. Isaiah turned to Miles. "We need to go bigger." Miles raised an eyebrow. "Bigger how?" Isaiah met his gaze. "We go to the press, the real press." Miles let out a low whistle. "Now you're playing for keeps." Isaiah nodded. "Yeah, I am." Because now, this wasn't about just exposing Reynolds. This was about forcing the school to finally do the right thing. And Isaiah wasn't stopping until they did. Isaiah wasted no time. As soon as he left Miles, he walked straight to an empty classroom, closed the door behind him, and dialed the number from the journalist's email. His hands were steady, but his heart was pounding. The phone rang twice before someone picked up. "Lawson speaking." Isaiah took a deep breath. "This is Isaiah Thompson. You reached out to me." A brief silence, then a shift in tone. The sound of someone sitting up, suddenly focused. "Isaiah, I was hoping you'd call." Isaiah swallowed. "You said you've been looking into Reynolds." "I have," Lawson confirmed. "And after seeing what's happening online, I think there's a much bigger story here." Isaiah glanced at the door, lowering his voice. "How big?" Lawson exhaled. "Let's just say I dug into Reynolds' past. I found some interesting things." Isaiah frowned. "Like what?" "Like the fact that this isn't the first time he's been accused of this." Isaiah's stomach dropped. "Wait, what?" "I checked old personnel files," Lawson said. "Reynolds used to teach at Harrison Prep, another school in this district. 10 years ago, there were complaints about him failing black students at a disproportionate rate." Isaiah's grip tightened on the phone. "And no one did anything?" Lawson let out a dry laugh. "Oh, they did something. They let him quietly transfer to Lincoln High." Isaiah's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just about his grades. This was a pattern, and the school had known. They had let him get away with it. "Isaiah," Lawson continued, voice serious, "this is what's called passing the trash. When schools don't want to fire teachers because it could lead to lawsuits, they just move them somewhere else. No paper trail, no consequences." Isaiah's mind raced. If Reynolds had been doing this for over a decade, how many students had he sabotaged? How many futures had he ruined? He forced himself to stay focused. "If we bring this to the school board, will they have to fire him?" Lawson hesitated. "They'll be under pressure, but schools protect their own. What you need is public outcry. The more attention this gets, the harder it'll be for them to bury it." Isaiah exhaled. "So what do we do?" Lawson didn't hesitate. "We go on record." Isaiah's stomach tightened. "Me?" "You," Lawson confirmed. "You're already at the center of this, but you won't be alone. I can speak to other students, build a full picture of Reynolds' history, but we need someone to go on record. Someone the school can't ignore. Isaiah's chest felt tight. This was it. If he did this, there was no turning back. This wouldn't just be a trending hashtag. It would be his face, his name, his story in print. Reynolds would know exactly who exposed him. The school would come after him. His college applications, his reputation, everything was at risk. But then he thought about Ava, about Daniel, about the students from Harrison Prep, the ones who never got justice, and he knew what he had to do. "I'm in," Isaiah said. Lawson's voice was calm but firm. "Are you sure?" Isaiah nodded. "Yeah, I want to do this." "Good," Lawson said. "Then let's make sure it's done right." The article drops. 2 days later, the Lincoln Gazette published their front-page article. Lincoln High teacher accused of grade tampering and discrimination, history of complaints uncovered. The first line hit hard. For years, students at Lincoln High have accused history teacher Mr. Paul Reynolds of unfair grading practices. But a new investigation reveals this may only be part of a larger pattern stretching back over a decade. Isaiah's name was there, quoted directly. So were Ava, Daniel, and Jordan. So were 2 former students from Harrison Prep. The article detailed everything: the falsified grades, the racial disparities, the hidden complaints. It revealed that Reynolds had been quietly transferred after accusations at his last school. It showed that Lincoln High's administration had known, but had done nothing. And at the bottom of the article, a statement from the school board. "We take these allegations very seriously and will be conducting a full review of Mr. Reynolds' record. Effective immediately, he has been placed on indefinite suspension while the investigation is underway." Indefinite suspension. Isaiah's breath caught in his throat. They were crumbling. For the first time, the school wasn't just trying to silence him. They were on the defensive. And the best part? The article went viral. By that evening, it had thousands of shares across social media. People were tagging the school board, the superintendent, local news stations. Parents were outraged. Former students started speaking up. By midnight, Isaiah received a text from an unknown number. "Unknown, you're ruining my career." Isaiah's blood ran cold. He knew who it was: Reynolds. Isaiah stared at the screen, his heart pounding. He could feel the anger behind the words, the bitterness. But he wasn't scared. Not anymore. He typed his response and hit send. "Isaiah, you ruined it yourself." Then without hesitation, he blocked the number. Because as far as Isaiah was concerned, Reynolds was already finished. Isaiah had expected backlash, but not like this. The morning after the article dropped, Lincoln High felt different. The usual buzz of students in the hallways had shifted into something sharper. Charged, electric, waiting. Isaiah walked into school, feeling every pair of eyes on him. Some students nodded at him, some whispered as he passed. Others avoided eye contact altogether. Miles caught up to him near his locker, smirking. "Bro, you broke the school." Isaiah shot him a look. "It's not funny." "Okay, but a little funny," Miles said, pulling out his phone. "Did you see this?" He turned the screen toward Isaiah. A local news station had picked up the story. "District investigating Lincoln High teacher over allegations of racial bias and grade tampering." Isaiah exhaled. It was growing bigger and bigger. And then the announcement came. The school PA system crackled. Dr. Holloway's voice filled the hallways. "Attention students, effective immediately, Mr. Reynolds will no longer be teaching at Lincoln High while the district conducts a full investigation. All students in his classes will be reassigned. Thank you." The hallway erupted. Isaiah stood frozen as students reacted around him. Some cheered, some gasped. Miles slapped his shoulder. "You did it, man. He's gone." But Isaiah knew better. Suspended? Yes. Fired? Not yet. This wasn't over. Not until Reynolds was permanently removed, and not until the school took responsibility. The backlash begins. The first sign of trouble came in third period. Isaiah was barely seated in class when Ms. Duncan, an English teacher, walked in stiffly. She was usually warm, the kind of teacher who smiled at students. But today she barely looked at him. She cleared her throat. "I need to take attendance. We're going to have a calm, productive class today, okay?" Isaiah didn't think much of it until lunch. As he walked into the cafeteria, Ava waved him over. Her expression was tense. "We have a problem," she said the moment he sat down. Isaiah frowned. "What?" Ava leaned in. "Some teachers are pissed about Reynolds. They think he's being treated unfairly." Isaiah scoffed. "Unfairly? He's been failing students for years." Jordan, who had been sitting next to Ava, nodded grimly. "Yeah, well, some of them don't see it that way. I overheard Coach Bailey telling Mr. Patel that this whole thing is an overreaction." Isaiah clenched his fists under the table. Of course, there were teachers who had defended Reynolds, teachers who had seen what he was doing and stayed silent, and now they were upset that he was finally facing consequences. Miles shook his head. "Man, this is why schools protect people like him. It's not just about one bad teacher. It's about the system that lets them exist." Isaiah took a slow breath. "Let them be mad," he said finally. "They're not the ones who got hurt." Ava nodded, but she still looked uneasy. "I don't trust them, though. Some of these teachers have a lot of influence. If they want to retaliate, they'll find a way." Isaiah sighed. "They can be mad all they want, but they can't change the truth." An unexpected visit. That evening, Isaiah was home, halfway through a college essay, when his mother's voice called from the living room. "Isaiah?" Something in her tone made him pause. He stood walking toward the front door, and when he saw who was standing on the porch, his stomach flipped. "Dr. Holloway." And beside her, a man in a suit. Isaiah's mother crossed her arms. "You didn't tell me we were expecting guests." Isaiah stiffened. "We weren't." Holloway offered a thin smile. "We just wanted to have a conversation." Isaiah's mother didn't move. "Then say what you came to say." The suited man stepped forward. "I'm David Larkin, with the district legal department." Isaiah felt his chest tighten. A lawyer. Larkin cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss the impact of the recent news coverage." Monica's eyes narrowed. "Go on." Larkin adjusted his tie. "Given the intensity of the situation, we're concerned about how this affects the school's image. The board has received numerous calls from parents, some supportive, some questioning the validity of the accusations." Isaiah's stomach turned. "Questioning," Monica repeated. "Are you saying my son is lying?" Larkin's face remained neutral. "No, ma'am. But we do believe that certain aspects of this situation have been exaggerated in the media." Isaiah stepped forward. "Nothing was exaggerated. Everything in that article was true." Holloway sighed. "Isaiah, you've put the school in a very difficult position." Isaiah's jaw clenched. "I didn't put the school in this position. Reynolds did." Larkin exhaled. "Look, the board is willing to offer a formal apology to the affected students. We'll revise the grades and implement a review process for teachers moving forward." Isaiah crossed his arms. "And Reynolds?" A long pause. "Mr. Reynolds will remain on administrative leave while the investigation is completed," Larkin said carefully. Isaiah's stomach twisted. That meant they still weren't planning to fire him. Monica scoffed. "You came all the way here to tell us that? You must really think we're stupid." Larkin hesitated. "We're hoping for cooperation, Mrs. Thompson. If Isaiah could perhaps ease up on social media." Isaiah laughed. "Let me get this straight," he said. "You want me to stop talking? To act like this never happened? So you can quietly investigate while hoping everyone forgets?" Neither Holloway nor Larkin responded. Isaiah shook his head. "Yeah, that's not happening." Larkin pressed his lips together. "Isaiah, you've made your point, but the more this story spreads, the more it hurts the school." Isaiah stared at him. Then slowly he spoke. "You know what hurts the school?" he said. "Letting a teacher fail students for years just because of the color of their skin. Letting him get away with it over and over again. And then when someone finally calls it out, trying to cover it up instead of fixing it." Larkin remained silent. Holloway let out a slow breath. "Isaiah, you're a bright student. You have a future ahead of you. I'd hate to see this become something that follows you into college." Monica's eyes flashed. "Are you threatening my son?" Holloway backpedaled. "Not at all. I'm just saying, sometimes it's better to move forward than dwell on the past." Isaiah let out a slow, measured breath. Then he met her gaze, his voice unwavering. "You're right. It is better to move forward. And the only way to do that," he narrowed his eyes, "is to make sure Reynolds never teaches again." Holloway's face tightened. Larkin sighed. "I see we won't be reaching an agreement tonight." Isaiah smirked. "Yeah, you got that right." Holloway nodded stiffly. "Then we'll be in touch." Isaiah and his mother watched as they walked away. The second the door closed, Monica muttered, "They're scared." Isaiah exhaled. "Good, because they should be." This wasn't just about Reynolds anymore. This was about the entire system that protected him. And Isaiah, he wasn't stopping until it burned. The school thought Isaiah would back down. They thought he would be intimidated. That once the superintendent sent lawyers to his house, once teachers started whispering behind his back, he would do what every other student had done before him, let it go. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. By the next morning, Isaiah had a plan. It started with a petition. Ava set it up first thing before classes started. The title was simple, direct, and impossible to ignore. "Fire Mr. Reynolds. Hold Lincoln High accountable." Isaiah sent it out to every student he knew. Ava blasted it across social media. Jordan shared it with alumni, former students who had their own stories about Reynolds, but never had a chance to speak. The numbers climbed faster than anyone expected. 500 signatures in the first hour, 2,000 by lunch, over 5,000 by the end of the day. And it wasn't just students signing. Parents started getting involved. Community leaders, local activists, teachers from other schools who had heard whispers about Reynolds but never had proof. By evening, Isaiah checked his phone and saw a news notification. Lincoln High faces growing pressure after allegations of racial bias. The article wasn't just about Reynolds anymore. It was about the school, about the superintendent, about a system designed to silence students rather than protect them. Miles called him that night, barely able to contain his excitement. "Dude, the board is meeting tomorrow." Isaiah sat up straight. "What?" "They scheduled an emergency session. Parents are demanding answers. They're going to decide what to do with Reynolds." Isaiah's grip tightened around his phone. This was it, the moment everything had been leading to, and Isaiah wasn't about to let them make decisions behind closed doors. The board meeting. The next evening, Isaiah stood outside the district office. It was supposed to be a small meeting, just board members, a few administrators, and maybe a handful of parents. But the school had underestimated the community. Hundreds of people showed up, students, parents, reporters, local news stations setting up cameras, capturing everything. Isaiah stood at the front with Ava, Jordan, and Miles, all of them watching as the doors to the boardroom opened. A security guard tried to hold them back. "Only scheduled speakers are allowed inside." A woman's voice cut through the noise. "They're scheduled." Isaiah turned. His mother stood beside him, her shoulders squared, her face set. The guard hesitated, then stepped aside. Isaiah took a deep breath. Then he walked inside, facing the board. The boardroom was cold and sterile, a long table surrounded by people who did not want to be here. Superintendent Whitman sat at the head of the table. Dr. Holloway was beside him. And on the other side, Mr. Reynolds. Isaiah's stomach twisted. Reynolds looked smaller than before. His face was pale, his lips pressed into a thin line. For the first time, he wasn't in control. Whitman cleared his throat. "We'll hear from one representative first. Mr. Thompson, you may speak." Isaiah stood, his pulse steady, controlled. He wasn't scared anymore. He took a breath, then spoke loud and clear. "For years, students at Lincoln High have been failed on purpose. Not because we didn't work hard, not because we didn't know the material, but because one teacher decided we weren't worth fairness." The room was silent. Isaiah turned, looking directly at Reynolds. "You've done this for over a decade. You did it at Harrison Prep. You did it here. And you almost got away with it again." Reynolds opened his mouth to defend himself, but Isaiah didn't let him. "You marked students absent when they were in class. You threw away assignments. You graded unfairly and called it high standards." Isaiah's voice didn't shake. "And the worst part? The school let you do it." Dr. Holloway's expression tightened. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Isaiah took a slow breath. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a printed stack of names. "These are the students who signed the petition," he said, placing it on the table. Ava stepped forward and placed another file next to it. "These are the emails from parents," Jordan followed. "And these are the testimonies from former students." One by one, they laid out the truth. The board had no defense. Whitman folded his hands, letting out a slow breath. "Mr. Thompson," he looked tired. "What is it you're asking for?" Isaiah didn't hesitate. "Fire Reynolds." A long pause, then Whitman exhaled. "Thank you. The board will deliberate." Isaiah clenched his jaw. "We're not leaving until you vote." Murmurs erupted around the room. Whitman sighed. "Fine. We'll hold a vote." It took less than 5 minutes. By the end of it, 5 out of 6 board members raised their hands. Reynolds was fired. Isaiah exhaled. Ava squeezed his hand. Miles grinned, nudging his shoulder. They had won. The news spread fast. By morning, the story was everywhere. Lincoln High teacher fired after grade tampering scandal. Superintendent announces new oversight policies after public outcry. But the biggest moment came when Isaiah checked his email and saw one message that changed everything. From admissions@harvard.edu. Subject, scholarship decision update. His hands shook as he clicked it open. He read the first line, then the second. Then his breath caught in his throat. "We are pleased to inform you that you have been awarded the full academic scholarship to Harvard University." Isaiah sat frozen. His mother walked in, noticing the look on his face. "Isaiah?" He looked up, his voice barely above a whisper. "I got in." For a moment, she just stared. Then her face broke into a smile. One of pride, of relief, of victory. She pulled him into a hug, and for the first time in weeks, Isaiah let himself breathe. This wasn't just a win against Reynolds. This was proof that fighting back mattered, that students had power, that no matter how much the system tried to silence them, the truth was always louder. And Isaiah, he would never let them forget it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you want to see more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new one.